We are here to inspire, inform, and connect a community of entrepreneurs. Welcome to Business Rockstars. I'm Pat O'Brien. Tom Bilyeu is our guest this time, the former president of Quest Nutrition, and now the founder and CEO of Impact Theory. Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
I love this company. I love what you're doing here because this is a lot of people that, if you watch this show a lot, that sit in that chair are trying to do what you're teaching. So what is Impact Theory?
Impact Theory is our attempt to really look at this generation of entrepreneurs that are coming up. They're very focused on bringing value to the world, which I think is absolutely incredible, but there's usually a gap in terms of their vision and their desire and their ability to execute against that. So we want to give people the tools that they're going to need both to get their mind where it needs to be an effective entrepreneur, and then just where the rubber meets the road in terms of executing on their business.
Right, help the world.
Exactly.
What was your first job?
My first job was in a door factory. So in the Bilyeu, in the Bilyeu family, you had to have a job during the summers. It was straight child labor. I'm not kidding. I was 12 years old, which I actually really respect that my parents made me do that. Gave me a lot of work ethic. I absolutely hated the job, and it taught me one very powerful lesson that I never wanted to do manual labor again. And so all through my summers, I worked manual labor jobs in paint factories, paint warehouse, paint stores.
It's a lesson, isn't it?
Yeah.
My family came from a meat packers group.
Okay.
And they worked at John Merlin Company out in the Midwest. And my first summer job was shoveling hamburger.
Nice. Okay,
And
you know the
it's
drill.
like shoveling bubble gum, by the way.
Really?
And at the end of that summer, my dad said, I think you should study and look for a job where you don't have to pick up anything.
Yeah, smart man.
So, but that's good. And was that the worst job you had, or?
Was it? No, I think at the end of the day, the thing that became the worst for me was when I was actually in a successful company that I'd worked my way from copywriter to partner in the company. It's a technology company. I didn't focus on being a great business person or running an amazing company that was putting out something. I focused on making money. And in focusing on making money, I really had no sense of why I was doing what I was doing. And it just ended up being so draining to give up that much time and be putting that much effort into something that I didn't care about. So that became the switch. And there's two ways to react to rock bottom. You can hit it and stay there and do woe is me, or you can hit it and be so angry that you're determined to make a change.
Right.
And that's where I was.
And just say, this is not me. The real me is somewhere else, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
And all entrepreneurs that come in here want to do that, but sometimes they just don't know how. I mean, there's not really anything until now. There's not anything really set up to teach them how to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, even looking at business school, looking at any school for that matter,
business school is not going to tell you to change the world.
Right. A, it's not going to tell you to change the world, and B, it's fundamentally not equipped to tell you how to be an entrepreneur. So being an entrepreneur is really about being adaptable. And there's an awesome quote by Charles Darwin. He says, "It's not the strongest of the species nor the most intelligent that survives, but rather the one most adaptive to change." And how do you teach somebody to be adaptive? So unless you're really going to go in and address the mindset, which to me is the absolute cornerstone of success, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to be focusing on your mind. You need to be building the mental reserves, the way that people build their body in bodybuilding, which everyone gets that because it's such an externalized thing. I couldn't lift this heavy weight and now I can. I didn't have six-pack abs and now I do. So that's really easy for people to grasp.
Because they see it.
Right, because they see it, and it's very easy for me to tell you what to do. But once it becomes mental, and what is it you suffer from? Anxiety, fear, are you lazy?
All made up.
It's interesting. I would disagree with that. And I think that, when you look at brain states and you look at, from an evolutionary perspective, like what is the brain trying to do? And getting to the anatomy of the brain was important.
It's your ego that's lying to you.
Ego is wildly problematic. But understanding what the ego's job is and how to leverage it was a huge breakthrough for me. Because I think people commit suicide when they no longer believe that they could ever feel good about themselves again. It's false. But once they believe that, that's where they go. And if it were true, it's not, but if it were true, it's actually a pretty reasonable response. If you could never feel good about yourself again, why would you want to keep going? So I think ego and pride are important. I think people need to feel good about themselves. I think they need self-esteem. But you have to be really careful what you build your self-esteem around. And for me, once I made the switch about what I built my self-esteem around, everything changed.
I think a lot of people, I'm going to get out and change the world.
Yes.
And I was one of those. And I did change the world. I ended the war in Vietnam, along with a bunch of other protesters. But I mean, but that's, you know, that's what you do. So you have to have something in your brain that's active enough to not only pay attention to your work, but pay attention to people.
For sure.
And how do you teach that?
To me, it really comes down to a set of very acquirable skills. And I think people believe and spread this notion that there are just certain things that are innate. Either you're self-aware, either you understand people, you have EQ, empathy, all of that, or you don't. And look, there are pathological conditions that some people have, and sure, maybe there's damage to the mirror neurons and they really can't empathize. Like, let's set those aside because that is such a small fraction. Most people need to train that discipline, and they need to do things to become more self-aware. So for instance, I have a really long fuse. I don't get angry very easily, but once I get angry, I stay angry. So for me, it was about actually treating that time that I was angry like a time trial and saying, okay, I was angry for 3 hours. Can I get that down to 2, 1? Can I get it down to minutes, seconds? Or can I get it to the point where it no longer crosses my face? And it's about finding the metrics. And so that was a simple metric for me to get control of that emotion of staying angry and understanding the brain states. And literally, like I was saying before, boiling it down to what Elon Musk calls the physics of a situation. And the physics of any mental situation is the anatomy of the brain. So I studied the living daylights out of the brain and understood what it's trying to accomplish, what its goals are, how we have 3 brains layered on top of each other, the lizard brain, the mammalian brain, the neocortex, how they interact. And in doing that, you'll begin to find those areas where you can either insert behaviors or habits or even hacks. And I'll give you one simple hack. And this was how I learned to shorten the time that I would stay angry. I read a study that said if you put a pencil in your mouth, it forces your mouth into a little bit of a smile. And just in doing that, if you ask people to take a test, there you go. If you ask people to take a test ranking their happiness, they'll rate it higher when they have the pencil in their mouth than they will if they don't. What that made clear is that there's a feedback loop that exists between your body and your mind. So if you scowl and focus on negative things, you're going to start to feel negative, even if there's no external stimuli. And the converse, if you smile and you focus on happy things, you can get more positive. But the really powerful thing was to laugh out loud. Depths of my anger and frustration, I would force myself to laugh out loud. And it is really hard to stay angry if you're laughing out loud.
Laughing is good. Who's your favorite entrepreneur?
Right now, the person that inspires me the most is Elon Musk. And what I love about Elon Musk is the grandeur of his vision and the willingness to execute. And that, like right now, and you and I were talking about this before we started rolling, we have a whole generation of people that have grandeur of vision. And that's really exciting. But they don't know how to execute. Not all of them, but some of them. There's a huge swath of them that don't know how to execute. And so really showing people that learning to execute on a business is all that matters. And if you have the grand vision, but the inability to execute, you have exactly nothing. So that's where we want to come in with impact theory, is showing people you have to dare to dream. You have to believe in yourself enough to be able to say, like Elon Musk, we're going to go to Mars. We're going to be an interplanetary species.
And fail and come back and do it again.
Exactly.
Well said. And I like the way he operates. What was your family life like growing up?
It was great.
Who are your mentors?
Well, my mom and my dad were certainly my earliest mentors, and they both forced me to learn to work hard, and that has served me very, very well. And even though I absolutely hated it, they made us do it. And so I worked all through high school, I worked all through college, and just hard work was a part of being in our family. Realizing
the importance of hard work too. I mean, or did you, or just go to work?
In the early days, I did it out of anger.
Right.
And so I was so angry that I had to work, but my parents had very high expectations. So there was no such thing as a B in my family. You got all A's. And they were still kind if you didn't, but they were clearly disappointed. So I learned to have very, very high expectations and to meet expectations through incredibly hard work. And that combination, though I didn't necessarily appreciate it when I was a kid, it served me well once I began to take my life seriously.
And that's a good lesson for everybody, right? What you don't like when you're 12 is probably the best thing that's happening to you, right?
Pat, I'm going to tell you right now, one of the reasons I don't have kids is I don't know that I have the guts to be hard on them. That's just true. And I think that you have to be. I think that the worst thing that can happen to somebody is that they never encounter hardship. There's an awesome quote by Nietzsche, and I'll paraphrase it because it's long as hell, but
he gets that way.
Yeah. He said, the thing that I wish on all my friends is pain, suffering, failure, self-loathing, because if you can make it through that, you'll have answered the only question that matters: can you endure? And I thought, oh man, that's so powerful. And that literally is the one thing with kids. I don't know if I could do it, to put them in that situation where it would be hard enough that they'd really learn something about themselves.
We are here to inspire, inform, and connect a community of entrepreneurs. I'm Pat O'Brien. This is Business Rockstars. Back in a minute. We are here to inspire, inform, and connect a community of entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Business Rockstars. I'm Pat O'Brien. Tom Bilyeu is the founder and CEO of Impact Theory, and a great guest. I mean, John Lennon wrote, "We all want to change the world," right? In Revolution. And that's what everybody in that generation came out wanting to do, but somehow they didn't get around to it, right?
Yeah.
And now the people that have the money and power and smarts to do it don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, and I've thought a lot about all the social revolutions that never quite got across the finish line. And one of the things that we want to do as a company is look at that. What's the no BS answer to following that through? And I think that commerce is a really big part of it, and I think that commerce is driven by the exchange of value, and we live in such an open and socially connected world now. And I still don't think people fully understand how much social media has changed everything. And I think in a good way, and it may be a distraction. I won't even argue with people if they think there's brain changes happening to people, fine. But what it's doing is it's creating this open ecosystem where within minutes of an interaction with you or your company, people have a global audience where they can talk about that interaction. So companies now are being forced to be responsible. They're being forced to think outside of the profits. They're being forced to think about how their products actually help and enable people. And to me, I think if people start making those demands of those companies, and when I think about Quest Nutrition and what we were trying to do, we built our brand, turned it into a $1 billion brand, second fastest growing company in North America, and we did it because we were focused on delivering a product that was metabolically real. It was actually advantageous for people. And just by flipping that switch and not asking what's more profitable, but asking what's better for the end consumer and saying, we're here to serve them, we want to do something great for them, that changed everything. And it changed everything in a way where our best marketing effort was telling people what our mission was to end metabolic disease, telling them that they could expect us to create a superior product, that we would go to the ends of the earth. I mean, we created our own manufacturing processes, we helped engineer our own equipment. I mean, really took it to the extremes to make products that were real for people. So I believe there's a generation coming up, they want to have that kind of global impact. They're going to be open to the message that there is a path to execution, but that it's going to be hard. That Michael Jordan became Michael Jordan not because he was innately talented, but because he put the work in. And if you know Tim Grover, who was his trainer for years, he said nobody worked harder than Michael, nobody. And for people to brush him off and say that it was just pure talent, he said is to miss the mark of what made Jordan great. And entrepreneurs need to start thinking of themselves in that way.
And Larry Bird, who couldn't run or jump,
Yeah,
his work ethic was so good that he was off the charts,
exactly. And you hear the same thing said about Kobe. And when you hear about people like that, and what's exciting to me is that we're living in an era where it's no longer just the athlete, it's no longer just the rock star. I mean, you guys have really made it obvious that business people are today's rock stars, and they're looked up to. When you think about Steve Jobs and the way that people literally worship that guy and what he built, and Elon Musk, who we were talking about, it's really cool now to be an entrepreneur. And as long as people understand that being an entrepreneur is using commerce to deliver value, like everything changes. And to have a mission and to know why you're in business and to make it about something way more than just the money. And that doesn't mean don't try to build a huge company. I think you should. And I think money's real. And I think that money is a great facilitator and it does amazing things for people. So I have no problems with people that want to accumulate wealth as long as they know what they're trying to do with that wealth.
How do you get them to flip the switch?
In terms of wanting to have impact, I actually don't think we have to do that with the generation that's coming up. They are hell bent to have impact. And they've been raised by people that have had them focused on the fact that big companies are evil and they take advantage of people. And so they already have this ethos of there needs to be a new kind of company. And I love that. And that is like the most exciting thing happening right now. And it's why Quest Nutrition blew up so fast, because people were hungry for a company that was coming out purely socially based. And this was before people knew how to use social media. It was purely socially based. We told them that we were responsible. We told them that we felt an obligation to do something great for them, and we would always prioritize that over profits. And they rewarded us by making us a fast-growing company, and was just incredible. And so showing people now, this new generation, that you need to learn the execution path to build a successful business. You can't ever ignore metrics. But at the same time, you need to understand the most powerful marketing vehicle you could possibly have is to have a mission and to really be trying to make change, real change that people want.
Tom, are there a lot of people that push back on that? I mean, the millennials, my generation, forget that. We just took what we could. I got lucky. But I mean, then there's a generation just money, 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 as the 80s. The millennials now, they all want to do this, but then when you start talking to them, you know, they use the empowerment words and all that, but it still seems that they're not all on board.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to show them the power of a well-run business that has a mission at its center. And as we have, because to put a really fine point on it, people can go to impacttheory.com and see, we have laid out exactly what we're going to do, because I am terrified that people will turn to us for inspiration when they should be turning to us for execution. And that's, you know, our 3-phase rollout is all about that. So phase 1 is community building, where we lay out the ethos of what it means to be a mission-based company, the kinds of problems that they should be looking at. Phase 2 is about building a technological platform that's going to allow the community to tell us what businesses they want to see actually come into existence, the missions that they care about. And then step 3 is going to be taking those entrepreneurs, those ideas, helping them get capital, helping them learn how to be seasoned entrepreneurs, giving them a safety net as they build this stuff up. And so when they learn a hard lesson that it isn't catastrophic, it doesn't kill them, that they're able to keep moving this forward. And that, I mean, like you say at the beginning of every segment, you're here to unite this group of entrepreneurs. And that is the revolution that we're living through right now. That's actually possible. Like, that's not hyperbole or BS. Like, what you're doing is real. And as more of these entrepreneurs coalesce and realize the pie is big enough for everybody, like, we just need killer executors. And we need people that are willing to stare their inadequacies in the face and say, this is what I need to get good at.
Do they have to kind of make out a schematic in their minds of how to do this? Or
I don't think there's any way around it. If you don't have a plan, I mean, we used to say when we were hiring, you hire the plan, not the man.
Right.
So, you know, at the end of the day,
Or
the plan, or woman. So just to make it rhyme, ladies, that's the only problem with that phrase.
Sorry.
So yeah, and there's, you know, I mean, to us, it's completely irrelevant whether they're male or female, but the plan is critical.
Where would you like to be in 5 years with this company?
So in 5 years, we should have a very robust community. We'll be incubating our first companies by then. We figure that's going to take about 3 years to get the community in place to begin actually incubating something. And then 10 years from now, the goal is to have our first exits from our first class of entrepreneurs and companies. And also looking at the evergreen movement. And some people will choose to exit, and some people hopefully will go towards the evergreen movement. It's headed up by a guy named Dave Wharton, a very successful investor. And he believes there's ways for investors to take liquidity out of a company without needing to sell, which I'm a huge believer in and just think is absolutely incredible. And then, if I may be so bold, our goal is on the same timeline, and because we haven't even talked about this in this interview, but there's a whole content side to what we're focusing on. Mm-hmm. So we want to help people build the kind of content that people can take life lessons from, but that are entertainment first, that have merchandising capabilities on the back end, that exist in a content ecosystem. So if you look at what's happening right now with social content, people are beginning to, like today, right? I have somebody following me around, they film me all the time. They film me all the time because I need to be able to turn my life into content, because that's how the world is working now. People want immediacy. Their phone is the TV. And being able to, mad shout out, by the way, to Gary Vaynerchuk, who's just what he's doing and how he's explaining to people that transition. For anybody listening, it really is this watershed moment. So understanding that, but understanding that people will always respond to this grand content as well that tells narrative in a traditional sense, we want to do both, to give people that kind of content, but through means that they are highly interactive, that they feel very engaged, it's very immediate.
Tom, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, man.
Good
It was
luck.
a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.